Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts thinks the Wolves should trade Cat, because you can't have a guy named Cat on a dog-based team. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. By the time this podcast comes out, we will know if the Wolves have been eliminated. But I am joined by Nate Tice, not to talk about his favorite basketball team, but to talk about quarterbacks. Nate, welcome back to the show.
Actually, you already guaranteed a loss tonight. Oh, man. That's a wonderful joke, though. I love the dog cat there. That was perfect. Great. Thanks. Fitting for coming in. I am wearing my Mariners. I'm trying to cycle through all my Mariners gear on this show. So as I go one show by show, wearing every Mariners shirt I have, Jackson actually pointed me in the direction.
Our friend Jackson Bevins, who does a good job covering the Seahawks, Cigar Thoughts. You guys should check out his stuff. Yes. Normally this is where I say where we can check out Nate Tice's stuff, but Nate is a man in transition right now. So he is here, just be quick, to talk about quarterbacks. We are drafting quarterbacks, as I have done, I think, for about 6 years now. I couldn't find the first one. You and I did it back in like 2020 or 2021. And just to remind folks of the parameters, we are drafting quarterbacks in a vacuum, not counting for situation or contract, with a 3-year timeline, which I've been consistent on over the years. I feel like 3 years is good enough to give some time for the young first, second-year quarterbacks, but also not rule out the older quarterbacks as you would with a longer timeline. We're going to do that. Before we get to that, you have a new job. I do want to just ask you how that's going. Nate is starting at Yahoo Sports. I imagine a podcast is forthcoming. Many things are in the works.
Yes, many things in the works. So still writing. The writing flow never stopped. It just keeps on going. Got to talk about those, intriguing new offensive coordinator hires, But yes, at Yahoo Sports now. The podcast, more featuring me. I will be sprinkled on some other shows with Matt Harmon and Charles McDonald over this next month in June. But kind of my show, leaning more towards the start of training camp, late July, early August, most likely late July, after my birthday, July 28th, by the way. But just after that, after that. So yeah, just that little window right there. But that's what we're thinking of. But it's been awesome. I know we have mutual friends that I'm now working with, which is great too. So it's been fantastic so far. And I'm just like everybody in the sports business right now, or the football business, just ready for the camp to start and the season to start. And I'm hitting this lull right now, but great with the job right now.
Can't wait to see what you guys do. A lot of guys that I know, worked with, friends. So I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah, I feel like I've cited Matt Harmon's reception stats now on. This is going to be like the first podcast in like 3 episodes where I don't cite them because it's about quarterbacks, but I'll be back to citing them when I talk about offensive rankings and X factors and all the other offseason things I do.
We're going to pump each other up about Rashad Bateman. Him and I just over there. Just give me their shit. We're already wearing purple, so we're just
Batemen. We're back. I haven't given up my Rashad Bateman stock,
never.
Or my Lamar Jackson stock.
Diamond hands
is pretty valuable now. I'm curious to see. I look back to see he went pretty high last year. I drafted with Ruiz last year. He did go pretty high. Correctly.
Stephen loves Lamar. Yes.
Okay. So I already laid out the parameters. 3 years in a vacuum. One quick note. We are including the rookie quarterbacks with the presumption that they will start. So it'll be Drake Maye, not Jacoby Brissett. It'll be Jayden Daniels, not Marcus Mariota. It'll be Caleb Williams, not whoever is backing up Caleb Williams. I can't even remember. It's maybe Tyson Bagent or whatever.
Is this still a Bagent?
I don't know.
Oh no.
And then and actually though we will draft both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I've decided, because that is like I think the closest thing we have to like a legitimate quarterback competition.
Yeah.
And I think there's some good discussion to be had. So I will let you go first with the most predictable and obligatory pick of the entire draft, Nate Tice. And I'm going to be writing them. So for a YouTube audience, you can obviously listen to this wherever you get your pods, but you can also watch on YouTube. I'm going to be keeping track of them by writing them on my whiteboard, as I have been doing for the War Rooms. All right, Nate Tice, you're up first.
Patrick Mahomes at number 1 with a bullet.
Okay, let me ask you, is there any possible case to not take Patrick Mahomes before we move on?
No. Even considering contracts and everything, there's no.
We're not.
No,
yeah.
I know we're not, but it's like just even considering that there's just no. It's just you can't pay him enough. That's another thing. Even if we want to include that, and he's in the prime. He's just hitting his prime, which is hilarious. It's fun to watch it reconfigure everything. Yeah, I think him number 2 for me. Who I might think who's going to be number 2 might be a little closer to 1 than maybe other people consider it, but I think it's a bullet with Mahomes at 1.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Patrick Mahomes probably play in the most adverse situation. Hopefully, we will see of his career. Although one could argue, and I have made this point, I think the Chiefs' offensive line was better than people gave it credit for. It was, there were like holding penalties that sort of kind of turned people off on them early on, but I actually think
false starts.
The false starts, right? And but I actually think it was actually fine for the most part, and
right.
is actually a bit of a question mark this year. But from the perspective of the people he was throwing to, hopefully it'll never be worse than what we saw last season. And
he's only getting smarter and better. It's incredible what he did last year. He's playing better quarterback playing the quarterback position better than ever, and it's just kind of just another season, but he's amazing.
Yeah, it is. He's been talking about how he's excited to throw deep once again now that he has, Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. And we were asked about it on NFL Live, like, do you think it happened? I said, yeah, I guess unless teams go back to playing too high against them, in which case he will just dissect them underneath, because now he has shown that he can literally solve every problem that defenses throw at him. The only thing he can't solve is being on his back. So if that's the only thing I would have any concerns about. But anyways, we don't need to get into Mahomes. All right. Yeah. I think 2 is very obvious.
I do too. So I'm curious.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a consensus opinion. He is somewhat divisive, at least in sports talk TV circles. Yeah. So I'm writing in this tiny font. I have picked 2, and I am taking Josh Allen here.
Oh, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah. I forget. I live in a different bubble than you. That's right. The interactions you get are maybe sometimes different than the ones I get about Josh Allen.
Yeah, we on TV do our occasional Josh Allen too many interceptions shows, or Josh Allen trying to do too much. Josh Allen's amazing. I've spoken about him a lot. I think I was just kind of looking when I was preparing for this, and I was mostly looking at other more debatable quarterbacks, but I was noticing some stats that jumped out to me about Allen. Lowest pressure to sack ratio in the NFL last year. Amazing under pressure. His numbers under pressure are obviously like just unreal. The thing I always go back to though, and maybe I always go back to this because I just still feel like it's not sufficiently appreciated, is how unbelievably efficient and deadly he is as a runner with the ball in his hands. This is the most
dangerous weapon in the league is him scrambling.
51.5% of his rushes last year went for first downs. That's the most of any quarterback by quite a bit. That's more than Jalen Hurts, who has the tush push. Like I just put that in your pipe and smoke it. I'm just saying, like, that is wild. Yeah. Most EPA per rush of any dual threat quarterback. He's just unbelievably powerful, durable, just unbelievable as a runner.
He is. He's the most dangerous scrambler in the league, and I'm including Lamar and all those guys with it. He really is. He's the most explosive, the most efficient. There's some, it was almost like nearly 80% of his scrambles were first downs or successful plays or something of that sort. Just an absurd number. Usually that's about mid 60%. So, and the volume he does it at. But the other thing too is he's become this just another guy that's maturing as a player, obviously, but just from another guy that pre-snap, it's slowed down for him. Like, he has his heat check moments because he can grasp things and do things that us mere mortals couldn't even fathom. And so he has some heat checks. Like the one I always come back to is they're playing the Bengals and he tried to throw a hole shot. And everyone went nuts about, there's Josh Allen trying things. But it's like, you know what? I've seen him hit it 7 times. So it's not like it's out of the realm of possibilities for him. But the thing is he is a lot more efficient and a lot more safe. Like he doesn't take sacks. He does the run around stuff is still neutral at worst. It's not like he's taking 15-yard sacks on those. So his pre-snap operation, he's handling protections now. He moves guys around. He's changing plays at the line, not just like package stuff, but just changing to stuff that he sees. I think he's just fantastic. Like I think the mental stuff slowed down even more so. Like and just on top of the crazy high level, high ceiling plays that like are just out of this world. I love Josh Allen. So I'm glad that's where I thought you were going. Cause we don't really talk Allen much, me and you, like privately. I think we just both are like, yeah, he's good. What else are we going to say?
It'll be an interesting year for him. This is kind of it is really funny because he's like 2019 Mahomes was 17, right? But it feels like he is on this sort of like Mahomesian trajectory, in terms of like his circumstances and sort of his development as a quarterback. Now, I'm not saying that his trajectory obviously hasn't won Super Bowls. Like, I'm not saying that. But I mean, from like a development standpoint, there's a lot of similarities in what the Bills are going through as a roster. It's going to be a challenging year for him. I'm really interested in seeing what he does. All right. I think that's
the easy part.
The way I did it, I felt like there was a pretty clear top 10-ish or so, but I really think there's a lot of cases to be made for different guys at 3, 4, 5. You have the next pick, and I'm very curious to see who you choose.
I wanted to deviate from this, and I did a little study. I think it was pretty classic. This is a big difference between an Ivy League grad and a state school grad. You seem to be prepped for this from weeks ago, and then I'm just like cramming all in the last 24 hours on a holiday weekend. But anyways, number 3, and I wanted to shake away from this, but I think he's just going to come back. It is just Justin Herbert at number 3.
Wow. That's not who I have. Okay.
I wanted it at first. This was 3. It was my gut. I like to kind of do my gut check, gut instinct ranking, and then go from there. And I wanted to move off. I wanted to go Lamar, wanted to go a couple other guys. I don't want to spoil anything, but man, just starting that Vikings game week 3, where he's just dropping back and just ripping drop back throws, no play action, no RPOs or anything. And watching him play quarterback, it's not a lot of guys can achieve that. Only the guys probably above him could probably do that in this ranking. He's only going to be 26 this year. Remember, he's only a few months older than Aiden O'Connell, who was starting last year, but he's been put in tough situations. And I think this year, get the load taken off of him is going to let him kind of shine even more, where it's just the volume might not be there, but those high end throws will be there because he won't have those kind of like where he has to check it down again, where he has to do another kind of safe play where we only see the highs and highs of this. But his ability to mitigate sacks, mitigate negative plays, his ability to achieve throws that not a lot of guys do. He created more than ever last year, scrambled 6% of the time, double the year before. He went from scrambling about the same rate as Andy Dalton, Davis Mills, to scrambling the same rate as Kyler. So it's like he's becoming more aggressive and kind of achieving that kind of like edginess that I want to see him. So maybe Harbaugh can unlock that next step from him.
Yeah, you posted a throw. I could tell you were watching him because you posted a couple plays.
Just wanted to make sure.
On Twitter. Yeah, I know, right? Like, is he as good as we remember? Because it was obviously a lost season for him. And so I think people, both him and Burrow, who I imagine we're going to talk about shortly, are kind of the forgotten men of the 2023 season. One of the throws you posted was an out to Allen, just thrown with like unbelievable zip and anticipation. Mm-hmm. Watching it, I felt a twinge of, oh my God, Keenan Allen's not on this team anymore. Oh my God. I'm like kind of, right. I think Glad McConkey can be that guy. And that's, again, not what we're here to talk about, but it did make me think about what a bummer it is.
Safety net is gone.
And there's such a good pairing of quarterback and receiver. But yeah, I ended up knocking Herbert down a little bit. For me, it was, you talked a little bit about the aggression and the playmaking, and there were times I think where you saw him, I think with use his legs a little bit more, which I've been wanting to. I think with him, it's always like a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. Is he not pushing the ball downfield more and trying to make more explosive plays because of his pass protection and the lack of weapons, or is he a little bit too robotic in his play style at times compared to the guy that I'm going to take, by the way? And I go look a little bit back and forth, and look, I had him 5th, or 4th. So it's
yeah,
not,
it's next
we're
year.
equivalent here.
Yeah.
But that is just something that I would like to, I don't know, like see more from him.
I get it.
It is, I mean, he's amazing.
He keeps me coming back. It was hard. That's why I had to rewatch. I was like, am I just like letting a couple games stand out to me? And I know that's what Herbert kind of people that, praise him kind of gets called out for. Oh, you only remember those hard throws and not all the stuff in between. When he throws it nearly 700 times, there's going to be a lot of mush in there, but it's just,
he's a machine.
He's a machine.
I was organizing not for the purpose of looking at Herbert, but I was trying to look up, I think we're going to get to the quarterback who I was looking at protection numbers. And I was like looking up numbers of quarterbacks in quick game. And Herbert last year, he played 6 games or something before he got hurt, or something obviously very small. He was first in QBR in quick game, entire NFL. Throws 2.5 seconds or less. First in QBR. Yeah. In a lost season that everybody thinks he was like, it's just.
With no speed, no guys creating after the catch. It was just, I know. So he's one of the guys that it's more eye test, more of those things. What I see the highs, the 2021 season when he was 3rd in QBR, 7th in EPA per play, like that, the game against the Raiders, week 18, a few years ago where they didn't make the playoffs, that whole, like, are they going to tie or not? Those highs just stand out to me so much because it's like, that's when the situation's decent. And he just hasn't had that to flourish. And for taking him in a neutral situation, like, that I would take a guy like Herbert because what he can achieve. All
right. So my number 4 guy was my number. I don't know if it's easy. I mean, I have Lamar.
Yeah.
4. Okay.
Yeah. Lamar's 4 for me overall. So,
okay. So one of the things that annoyed me most last season about NFL discourse was this, oh wow, Lamar finally showed he can be a pocket passer. That's absolutely ridiculous. He showed that.
Who's done that?
Yes, his first, his MVP season, go back and since college, but in particular that 2019 season, I thought he was incredible throwing from the pocket. But last year, you finally saw him with a better pass game around him, and obviously delivered on that to the tune of an MVP season. I think what really jumped out to me last year that I really loved was just his play under pressure. The way again, this isn't like the first time he showed this, but I thought if there's anything he really improved at in my eyes, it was his pocket navigation and his ability to manipulate defenders, make off-platform throws from inside muddy pockets, which is something he's always had in his bag, especially because he can throw from such unconventional arm angles. But I thought last season he took another step as that sort of passer. I picked him as my MVP. Very curious to see what slimmed down Lamar looks like this year as a runner, which is going to be really interesting. If there's one quarterback that I'm not super worried about with regards to managing his own, like his weight and knowing how that affects his abilities as an athlete, it is Lamar Jackson, who seems
he'll get sick every year, so he'll lose weight. Like, so maybe he should keep the weight on to start the year.
I feel like last year's, I should have said that. Last year was like the first year I feel like he didn't get sick. So maybe. Shout out to his doctors.
Shout out to Dayquil.
It's crazy, Nate. Like last year was like a quote unquote down year for Lamar as a runner, and he still like dominated in most rushing stats outside of Josh Allen. He actually had the most rushing yards over expected of any quarterback in the NFL, which is the next gen stat that accounts for like the presence of defenders and how many yards should be gained relative to that. The idea of him being even faster is pretty terrifying. I'm super high on Lamar Jackson, obviously.
Yeah. Love Lamar, 27 years old, has 2 MVPs. Like what I could just like end it right there. Kind of a weird stat like differential. I don't know what the term I'm going to use for, but he had the fewest rushing attempts he ever had as a full-time starter last year per game, but he had the highest scramble rate he ever had as a starter and highest in the NFL last year. So that means kind of less designed rushes and probably more straight dropbacks where he was doing more. That usage was kind of just all on him. Him and Josh Allen felt more alike last year than ever. Where as far as just how they use them both, like design runs, but only a couple. The runs are more from scrambles and passing situations. But yeah, like you said, he's always been underrated as a thrower, even coming out of college, like where he was operating like a true NFL type offense that has overwhelmed NFL quarterbacks before. But one of the best in breaker throwers. Like, I know that sounds so hipster niche stuff, but
No.
he really is. He stands in the pocket and rips those throws as well as anybody. Handled more pre-snap stuff than ever last year. I thought Monken did a great job of kind of letting him have some freedom to change stuff. I thought that actually was it surprised me sometimes, where I saw him pause and point things out, change the mic, change who they're going to in protection, change a play. And also just you kind of alluded to it, but I thought the Rams game was such a fun game overall. But God. Yeah, I mean, just everything that happened in that game. But he had the touchdown. I really want to say it was to OBJ, where he is drifting in the pocket away from Aaron Donald. Old Lamar would have scrambled there, and it's in the red zone. He stays to throw. He is drifting to throw. That is playing quarterback, and he's doing it away from Aaron Donald. And it's kind of one of those things where only Lamar can drift backwards to his left faster than Aaron Donald. So like that athleticism shows up as he's playing real quarterback. And so, yeah, he just keeps growing. He's so young. It's just so cool. I can't wait. And like you said, the hit stuff he doesn't take a shot. I've kind of compared him with Wayne Gretzky over the years. Kind of like he could just not take those hits. He knows how to get down. He knows how to get out of bounds. He knows how to get skinny. So, yeah, love Lamar. I think he's just going to keep ascending. Such a good player.
What was so cool about that game, the Rams-Ravens game, which to me was one of like the games of the 2023 season. I think after it happened, I was like, I'm going to like a squirrel storing their nuts for the winter. I'm going to like keep,
coming back to it.
Yeah. Go back to this game when I'm really missing football.
Oh, week 14.
What I loved about it was some of those throws, including the touchdown throw that you alluded to where he's falling off. You saw something that I have long believed, but I don't feel like it's certainly not something you hear. Yeah, which is he reminds me a little bit of Matthew Stafford with some of the throws he makes. And I don't think he gets credit for, again, the arm angles and Lamar has always been a guy who can make like the really high degree of difficulty throws and then sometimes misses the easy ones in a way that can be perplexing. And that's been a thing and sometimes during his career. But in that game, he was hitting everything. And then you really saw, both of these quarterbacks are like trying it's like a trick shot competition now.
It's a dunk contest.
Which is.
And Stafford keeps getting in those. He got in one with Anthony Richardson. He got in one with even Goff in the playoffs. Like Matthew Stafford brings out the dunk contests out quarterbacks. Like he's just like, all right, here's a 360 between the legs. What do you got? All right, let's see what you can throw down. I'm
curious to see how high Stafford goes. In him, it's purely timeline is the issue.
He's the toughest one. He was a tough one.
Well, I don't think he's next. So you're up next.
Oh, it's getting straight. Like this. I swerved here.
This is where if you don't take a certain guy, I think everyone's gonna be really mad. Some people
everyone's gonna be mad.
They're already mad that we haven't taken him. I would. Well, okay.
Everyone's gonna get mad at this one. I already know it. And I really thought this one through.
Can I guess?
How to watch this out. And I'm taking him over a couple guys that are kind of my guys too, which is like astounding me. But number 5, next 3 years, Jordan Love, quarterback, Green Bay Packers. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll start with some stats. 5th in EPA per play, 9th in QBR.
That's
bottom
season
5.
Long.
That's season long. Bottom 5 in sack rate, all season long stuff with the youngest offense that we'll see in probably our lifetimes that the Packers trotted out last year. Yes, he has a very, very, very good play caller in Matt LaFleur, but he's legit. This guy is a top 5 quarterback, top 6. I'll put it there. But he is in this next tier to me. And you go to the back half of the year, he was already doing in the first half of the year where everybody else, all the young guys were making mistakes, taking turns. They had injuries all around them. And then in the second half of the year where they got some consistency, they figured out the offensive line. They kind of figured out what worked for them. The young guys kind of started maturing. We saw what happened. They won games. They put up points. What he did in the playoffs and what the throws that he can achieve. That's what these top guys can do. He easily can do it. He's not as great of maybe as a scrambler. He's a solid athlete more than like a very good one, but he can run a little bit. But throw angles, working on time, arm strength, all the throws he can achieve every single throw that you want, and they designed it like that. Aggressiveness, and again, doesn't take sacks while doing it. Yeah, I know this is high. Trust me, Love was not my gut. He was not my gut number 5. This was a study number 5. And I feel pretty good about it because I just think he's going to keep ascending, especially in that offense. I know we're doing neutral, but in that offense, especially, I think, Jordan Love's in for a very fun year.
So I thought we were going to have a debate about Jordan Love versus the quarterback who I think he's probably compared to the most and will be compared to the most going forward because they're the same class, or probably not the same class, but they both had these breakout seasons. And
I know.
You know who I'm talking about, and we're going to talk about him in a second. I'm not taking him next, which means you're probably going to take him next, which makes me very angry. But let's stay on Love for a second before we get to that. When we get to that quarterback, we can have that conversation. You hit on something that I think is really important about Jordan Love, which is people look at his season last year and they say, okay, ups and downs. And then second half of the season, he was unbelievable, right? Mm-hmm. Weeks 9 through 18, first in QBR from inside the pocket, first on third down, second under pressure, second on play act. Like he's first or second in just about every meaningful category. And the eye test, it wasn't, like you said, Matt LaFleur did a great job scheming stuff up for him. And I thought just calling games generally, but Love also made very high degree of difficulty throws. So but people say, well, it was half a season and it's a 1 season sample size. But you said something important, which is, it's half a season, but it was like the youngest offense in football. Of course, the second half of the season would be better. And when you look at the defenses, it wasn't like they played like a bunch of cupcakes at the end of the year either. He just balled out, and everybody around him balled out. Like some of those young Packers receivers, you could see them growing as receivers as the year went on.
Figuring out the roles and everything. Exactly. It was so cool. Yeah.
They were all on the same timeline. So while I don't think we can take for granted that, he's going to be one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL, that's it. Like just because he was in the second half of that season, there's ups and downs always. I think about the Giants game in the second half of last season, a good example of one where it's like, okay, 5 steps forward, 1 step back.
Yep.
It's okay.
Checks can blow up in your face sometimes. Yeah.
But a half a season with that cast and putting those plays where it was clearly him on tape, I've seen enough.
Yeah.
Now I haven't seen enough to have him. I would take him here. You're taking him higher than
it's higher than I even thought.
But I've seen enough. He is that dude.
Once we start talking about the next couple guys, I'll kind of maybe get back to maybe why Love had him. I stacked above him. But you see quarterbacks all like no quarterback, 2 quarterbacks are alike as much as we want to compare them. And I'll compare guys throughout the show, but it's you can see each of them make like a drop back their own and make everything their own. Like the throws their own, how they throw certain routes their own, how they drop 5 steps and hitches their own. Even like when in the same room, guys could be taught differently because they have their own rhythm. You could see Love last year, like get his own rhythm. Like he became like, you play a video game, like you play a baseball video game, you do your own batting stance and do that. Like he got his own batting stance last year. Like it was like he was able to do that, and then he was able to throw with looseness and achieve those throws in rhythm. So it's just really cool to see that confidence kind of manifest. Using that word twice in one show, like proud of myself right now. But using that twice, like or using that, seeing that throughout the year and seeing that kind of like that process become good results in the second half of the year is like that's why I'm just optimistic. That's gonna maybe not Disco Stewart, where it's like to the moon, but maybe just maybe another half step up, or maybe maintain that second half of the year where it's top 4-ish quarterback play.
He's about to make so much money.
So much money.
Yeah, good for him.
You're paying all these rookies. Where's the money going to go? Like you're paying all that.
Somebody's got to get paid there. Okay, so I had this player above Love. I had 2 players, although one of them I was really torn on. But I have Joe Burrow, hero.
Okay.
This is the player who I was alluding to, and I was like, people are going to be mad. People are going to be mad.
People are going to be real mad.
Okay, so the reason why I didn't have Joe Burrow in the top 3, I guess 4, was injuries. We're now coming off of, another, he had the season-ending injury, and then he had the injury before the season that really hampered his play, which, by the way, is part of the case I'm going to make for him, which is a lot of last season, he was just so clearly not himself. And when I think back to, I was looking back on my notes from his week-to-week performances every week, and I remember in the Seattle game was probably the nadir for me. Again, week 1, he looked really bad against Cleveland, but then the Seattle game, I was like, oh, he is not right or whatever. But then what was so shocking was the following week was one of, I would say, the best performances by a quarterback for me of the season against San Francisco.
49er game, yeah. Phenomenal.
That was Joe Burrow. And the Joe Burrow we know he's capable of being, and the next week as well, and then he gets hurt. So I am obviously, this isn't what I bring this all up to say. This isn't just about like he's been, to the Super Bowl and he was, this and that. It's like, no, I'm thinking about what I saw from him last season and the quarterback I think he is, always capable of being at his best. Only spooked a little bit by the injuries, but there's nothing else for me that other than the injuries that would make me not want to bet on him moving forward.
Yeah. With Burrow, I consider him not at the tier of Allen Mahomes. I consider him more I think there's a break after those two guys to me. And then it goes into this next tier. And this is where I consider Burrow in that tier. The ones we're talking about right now, all these guys that we've just mentioned. So do some math. 3 downwards. So
there's one more guy that I have in this.
I probably have 2 more.
I know you're
3 more.
I know who your 3 are.
Yeah, 3 more, and then there's a wild card I can maybe throw in here too, but we'll get to it. Okay. But with Burrow for me is just even traits wise is doesn't have the upper tier arm strength these other guys has. He mitigates that as well as anybody in history that I've seen. As I've never seen a guy that maybe has average arm strength push the ball as much as Burrow is able to, because he's just timing. He's great with timing. He's great with understanding what he can and can't get away with. Like you said, it's like some of the injury stuff is why I ding him a little bit. I also think maybe some of that stuff at the end of the year with Browning kind of it was like, oh, okay, this offense is still kind of clicking. All right. Yeah. Well, but as I watch, and it's not fair to him to do this, but watching other offenses just fall completely apart as their quarterbacks get hurt. Also, credit to the Bengals coaching staff. But man, it's his ball placement, his accuracy, his pocket movement, his ability to extend with his eyes down the field or scramble on third down. Like when you watched him, that 49ers game is a great example. Watch him just create some stuff. It's like, oh yeah, this guy, he could do that, because that Browns game was bad. That was rough. That was a rough performance from that offense, and you could just tell he couldn't move. So yeah, I think this tier. I think this is a very fair placement for Joe Burrow. This is kind of the exact same kind of placement I had him at.
Those were great points that I will not be clipping because I burped very loudly while you were talking. I don't know if you heard that. I took a big swig of seltzer, and then I full on belch there. I'm with you. I think this time next year I could move him up, it seems like T. Higgins is going to play out the season, so it'll be pretty similar circumstances to what we've seen. I think because we're talking about how like Josh Allen's going through kind of what Mahomes went through. I think Burrow, that's not going to happen until probably next year, where he's sort of dealing with some dubious pass catchers, but we'll see.
Pound drain. Yeah, they're doing a decent job, like team building there, but it's hard. Those are 2 really good receivers. It's hard losing one.
Oh, they're doing like what the Chiefs did, which is also focusing on the line, and I like the defense that they've made focusing on the line, bringing in Trent Brown, conjunction with drafting Mims. I love the Mims pick. I loved it with those 2 things together, Yep. Yeah, like he doesn't have to play immediately if you don't want him to.
Exactly. And it's like, oh, maybe we try him at guard, see if he can do anything. If not, all right. He's okay.
I know what you're taking next, so I'll just
write it. Dude, though. So these next 2 are really hard for me. What did you write?
Stroud.
Yes. Okay. So I thought you were going to say Trevor there. And so Trevor and Stroud.
Okay, you are a known Trevor enthusiast.
I am, but Stroud won out in the end.
Okay.
I love him. I love Stroud. I love both these guys. All these quarterbacks are very fun to talk about. But CJ Stroud, though, really liked him in the QB the QB draft process, but also now as a pro, love him. I would say Stroud, Dak Prescott, and Kirk Cousins. If I were teaching a young quarterback just mechanics and just how to operate as a quarterback, those are the 3 guys. It's those 3 play the position as far as dropping back, as far as hitching up into the pocket, as far as the ball coming out on time, the timing he plays with, the aggressiveness he plays with. Oh, and he also has he doesn't want to scramble. Like he wants to just chill in the pocket and dice you up. Yeah. And with a lot of these young guys, it's more the opposite, where it's like, look at these athletes, look at these guys run. Stroud can run a little bit when he does scramble. He's fine, but it's so cool to see this kind of old school mentality at quarterback where he's like, no, I'm going to stand here and rip it. And I just love that kind of that play style, that being able to play quarterback and not just being a true overwhelming athlete, but truly just doing the operation stuff so well. But also has the Warren Moon, Chris Leak thing where every ball is a perfect spiral. Oh, and it's just beautiful. So
yeah.
Stroud's awesome.
I was having trouble deciding between Stroud and Love, and it was almost like
this group's tough.
It was. I mean, I'm trying to think of like a basketball analogy. Stroud, it was like Love. I feel like was almost like Kyrie, where I was like just like unbelievable trick, like the
shot
skill
making.
and maybe Kyrie's not the best example for it, but
not terrible though. I like that.
Yeah, but Stroud, it just looks so damn pretty.
Yeah.
I had a really hard time choosing between them, honestly, because it's like you could argue. I think Stroud better receivers, but terrible run game, very injured offensive line. That actually ended up being a little bit of the deciding vote for me. I was like, ooh, Stroud, I just saw do it with some pretty sus protection and a horrible saddled with an awful run game that they insisted on adhering to at times. Whereas Love, again, he gives a lot of credit for playing with like really, really young players, but that Green Bay offensive line is really good. And so I just kind of was, like I was kind of like, who do I feel like gets more credit for the offense? And I ultimately tilted a little bit to Stroud, but it was like neck and neck for me.
It's tough because LaFleur is really good, and then also like what they're doing with Sloat does with the Texans, and it's like you see some of the training wheels aspect of being in the Shanahan offense, but also that's what LaFleur's in too. So it's like they both have that same kind of. I know, so it's like I couldn't make an argument. I went through the same exact thing, because you have to look at the ecosystem that they're in. Yeah. So it was one of those where it's like, oh, but they both kind of get help there because they both kind of have that thing. So I totally get it. Yeah, these guys were tough.
And I think I've been on the record about this. I think Nico Collins is like a dude. So if I was, drafting the skill players from both of those teams, he would be my number one pick. So obviously Stroud gets help there. Here's what I love so much about CJ Stroud. I mean, there's a lot of things I love about watching him last year, but it's a word that you used talking about him, which is the aggression. 11.5% of his plays last year gained 20 or more yards.
That's awesome.
Insane. The second highest average at the target in football, but despite that, had the lowest interception rate. Some of that, there's a little bit of luck involved, but that combination of aggression and not turning the ball over is a formula for long-term success in the NFL. And it's so in line with what you see on tape, which is so smart and so aggressive at the same time.
Usually the scrambling and doing those types of things or underneath throws, that's your safety net as a quarterback. I don't see it that well. I'm going to bail the pocket and maybe create some out structure. Yeah. The fact that Stroud's able to go like, hey, we're running the same play, but I'm not throwing the 4-yard throw. I'm throwing the 24-yard throw, the deep dig, all those things. Like it's sticky. It's more sustainable no matter who the coordinator is, no matter what, because he's just going to be able to push it and find those kind of nooks and crannies to find those big plays. And he could do it already. He's like 22. It's insane.
It's one of my favorite deep dig throwers in the NFL.
Another deep dig throw. Yes. To Nico Collins usually.
That's kind of like the throw maybe where I'm like, if you took probably ranked the top 5 deep dig throwers in the NFL, that would probably be like my 5 favorite quarterbacks to watch. So.
Oh yeah. It's like a guitar solo for a quarterback.
So I have that was my tiers. Basically, that was my second tier. Herbert, Jackson, Love, Burrow, Stroud in whatever order. And then I have the next 3 guys in a different and kind of the next tier for me. I know who you're going to take next. Pardon me. I have 4 guys in this next tier.
Okay.
I am going to not take him, and I am going to take Dak Prescott.
Okay. 8. No qualms. I consider him as part of this tier as well. So I love this. Let's hear it. Let's hear some Dak love.
It's tough because you can point to everything he accomplished during the season and how amazing he was, and you can slice it up literally every way possible. Pressure, blitz, third down, third and long, pass, whatever, on the move. And he is first in just about every category, and it's not cheap first. If you watched, he was awesome. And then, somebody say, well, what about the last game? And then you just, it's like, how much do we factor that in? What matters? Who do we blame? And it becomes this conversation. I feel, though, that putting him at 8 is fair enough to encompass both of those things, which is how unbelievable he was during the regular season. And then, what we saw at the very end. How do you feel about him generally?
Big fan. Him and Burrow actually are more alike than people want to give credit to or give credence to. They have similar ways to win: accuracy, timing, a little bit of creation out of the pocket, a little bit of scramble. Could once in a while put a little too much dip on their chip, and maybe not overwhelming arm strength and all those things, but they still play aggressive. I really, really like Dak. Again, like teaching QB mechanics, he'd be one of the guys I would teach just because of I consider him a quarterback's quarterback. His pre-snap play is tops in the league or amongst the tops in the league on the podium. Sometimes tries to outsmart himself once in a while, but incredibly accurate, underneath, intermediate, willing to push the ball, but again, has some arm strength limitations, but he can overcome it, creates and extends. I think just Dak, just eye test QB stuff. I really like him. Obviously, I have him as in this tier, like I just said, but then you look at stats. Third in EPA per play last year. He was ninth the year before that, ninth the year before that. Over the last 3 to 4 years, it's like him, Mahomes, and Josh Allen are kind of like, if you would just look at those stats combined. But if just looking at QBR, and because he's the quarterback of the Cowboys, everyone's going to talk, he has under a huge microscope. He's going to get praised sometimes too much, and he's going to get dinged too much just because of that. And I think every time he loses or has a bad performance, it gets just crazy. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I know you have to deal with it a lot, but it's just, I just look at stats and look at different ecosystems and look at different situations that Dak Prescott's been in, and all he does is perform. And not just perform like, where this guy's a solid starter, perform as a good or better, very good or excellent quarterback. So just looking at QBR, and this is what I just want to leave it under. This is under 3 different play callers, 2 different head coaches, varying defenses, varying O-line play, who know if Tyron Smith was playing that week or not, and 4 different leading receivers since he's been in the league. This is QBR. He's ranked 3rd, 4th, 18th, 4th, 11th, 12th, and 2nd. This is, again, QBR takes in the ecosystem, but some of those performances, 77.6, 70, 71.9, 73.1, 60.5, 72.7. If those who don't know really QBR, 50 or above, 50 is considered average for that season. It's, accounted for the season average as well for QB play in the league. 70 is like a very good season. It's a very good season. It is, no matter how you slice it up. Yes, some of these can be cheap yards and everything, but yeah, that no matter how you dice it up, it's going to be looked at back when you look at it, it's going to be a top 5 type of season. And he just does this no matter who is around him. So I know that it can get kind of just exhausting talking about Dak Prescott, but this guy is a very good quarterback. And no matter how you look at it, it's a top 10, top 8 quarterback. Statistically, eye test. I don't know what else you can kind of put out there. He won a wild card road game last year. And everyone's like, oh, you can't win the playoffs. And it's like, what happened? Like, he just did it last year. I don't know. So the arguments are exhausting. He's a good player. Really like Dak Prescott.
Wait till some team pays him $75 million a year, then we can do this. It'd probably be the Cowboys.
Right.
Okay. 9, keeping things moving. I think I know who you've got, but you can tell me.
Trevor Lawrence?
Yes. I rearranged it, by the way, so that we can see whose team is who. So you're 9 Lawrence.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Like that. Yep. Trevor. I just feel like I just ran about Dak. I feel like I have to do the same about Trevor in situations. So
yeah, let me ask you a question about Trevor. There's 2 things I think. So there's a split that I think is very revealing of some of a large part of why he struggled last year. And I don't know if you've brought this up, but this is something I started noticing developing over the course of last season. Trevor Lawrence last year, obviously he was, it was not a great season for the Jaguars, kind of fell off a cliff. 2nd in QBR versus zone, Okay. 28th versus man. I think that is a pretty revealing statistic about the 2023 Jaguars offense. Would you agree?
Yes. It was I kept coming back that their skill position and really offensive line was very fragile, and not the sense that injuries overall, but just one injury had a domino effect in a negative way on that whole entire offense. Just every player had to play in specific spots. You didn't have a lot of players that can move around the formation. And Trevor did his best. He's trying to get that ball out on time, but guys aren't winning for him. Guys are running the same route or running into each other. I also thought they're trying to mitigate some of the offensive line woes. Maybe go, oh, we can't drop back as deep. So they're throwing the ball really quick and throwing screens and all this. And it's kind of like, yeah, you kind of put a ceiling on the offense. You put a limit on the offense. And when they kind of opened it up for about 2 to 3 weeks before some injuries started to happen right after their bye week, you saw against the Texans, I believe was a game at Houston, and you saw him open up play action down the field, and you're like, there it is. This is a guy that looks like to me, a top 5 caliber quarterback because of his athleticism. Again, another guy that can mitigate sacks no matter what the situation is. He can drive the throws. He wants to be aggressive when it's given to him, but he just has been some tough situations right now. And I know sometimes the stats don't go, it's not like a tough situation where he's still putting up 34 touchdowns and 4,000 yards and stuff. And so fantasy people go, oh yeah, he's still good. The stats aren't overwhelming when you look at him. So I get it. But when you watch him, he's just a really, really, really good player and just can achieve really high end things. Just doesn't have the circumstances that really always shows those things.
I like him a lot. I think he can do everything that you want. Like he's got every tool in his arsenal. I think for me, it's just the inability to put them together consistently over long stretches. And then the other thing I kind of ding him on is like, he's a little bit of a goofball when he plays.
Explain. I want to hear that.
He's just got some goof in his game that Love has this a little bit too, but in a good way.
Goofs. Yeah.
And I think it can manifest itself with some of the decision making
in the red zone.
Fumbles. Yeah, the fumbles, they're like goofy fumbles. I don't know.
That's funny.
It's not really great analysis, but and the fumbles, by the way, that's a real thing now because it's not just a one seat fumbles. It can tend to be. It can he presses, and it can with a lot of players, it can be like a statistical aberration, especially if they're not recovered. But we're now going on like he had 12 less this year, 12 the year before. That's not great. It's not great. It's a thing. Yeah. But I led with the stat I led with because watching it, I was like, oh, they're like guys aren't winning for him, and I didn't think they were being put in a position to do so. But you make a good point about the offensive line, and I think that is something that kind of got underappreciated, which is how much that dictated what they could do on offense and the way Trevor was throwing it.
Only 4 months older than Bo Nix, by the way.
We'll get to Bo. Okay, so that was I have one more player in this tier. I don't know if I sense he might not be in yours, I'm going to go Hurts here at 10.
Okay, no, he is not in this tier.
Okay. I'm taking all the like Burrow, Prescott, Jackson. I'm taking all the guys we talk about a lot on TV. You're taking all the hipster picks.
I know it's great. You're
we
a great
actually
host.
have similar. Like I would have taken Love and Stroud if I could. I absolutely love them. I wrote Bro. Okay, so the thing is, obviously our last memory of Hurts is pretty terrible, and we saw him really, really struggle against the blitz in particular in ways that was reminiscent of his first year in the NFL. So this for me is largely on a bet that he can improve the way he has through most of his career with different coaching, and that he can return to some of the play we saw previous season. But even times this season, like I still think he's like a really good and underrated thrower of the football. I think with him, that's not my question. It's more just so his ability to manage pressure and obviously manage the blitz in particular. The other thing I think I'm betting on is that he will be more dynamic as a runner than we saw last season, which really I thought affected not just his play, but they were still calling an offense that was based entirely on him being this unbelievable dual threat, and he just wasn't. But I think he can be. I mean, he's super, super young and super, super athletic, and I feel like was probably hurt in ways that we didn't know. So there's a little bit of speculation rather on my part in still having him in my top 10 because we're at 10 right now. But I don't think it's like wildly speculative. Like the things I'm talking about aren't like it's not like we've never seen him play at a top 10 level. We have pretty recently.
Second team All-Pro 2 years ago. I've always been kind of a little lower on Hurts than others. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's some of what manifested in, God, stop using that word, Nate. What happened in the last game against the Bucs.
It is my big one.
Man, but I don't usually use that word. It's just like, I don't know.
By the way, it's horrible that was the Bucs because it was the Bucs year one too, who did.
Yes. Yeah. Dismantled. Yes. It shows, it kind of shines a light to what his weaknesses still are. And I think the Eagles, and with Kellen Moore calling plays, but just, I know we're doing this in a vacuum, but still just considering real life circumstances with Hurts, Kellen Moore, with Jason Kelce gone, Jason Kelce's handling of everything pre-snap is one of the most fascinating experiments to me in the NFL. Kellen Moore in prior years, he's had Justin Herbert. He's had Dak Prescott, two of the smartest pre-snap quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And he put a lot on their plates, a lot. And now Hurts, who's had a little bit, Steichen gave him a little bit more in their Super Bowl run. But I'm just curious what happens. Kelsey did so much. He was a quarterback pre-snap as well. He was a coach on the field, whatever kind of idiom you want to use. But he handled a lot. So that's one of, to me, I want to see Hurts expand that role, take on more of that operation, because I think more will put more on him. But your point about him being a runner is such a great point, because last year he was, I think, one of the least efficient design runners in the league, after being one of the best ones. He went from like top 3 to bottom 3, I think, in like all those rushing stats. So that he just has to be at least average, and that at least above average, because he has to do it at so much volume. So Hurts to me is maybe, after the next couple of guys here, he's more in the mid-teens to me, like 14, 15 tier, just because I want to see more of that growth. And I'm really curious in this kind of circumstances he's now in.
Okay, I have no idea who you got 11.
No idea?
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm looking at I have a guess.
I'm torn between two. One's young, one's old, and they had like an absolute haymaker fest last year. But I'm going young here. Anthony Richardson.
Wow.
I love
this is the one that, based on my recent experiences on social media, people are going to go nuts.
Controversial, huh?
I didn't know he was so divisive. For those who are not perpetually online, I posted a very mild take about how I thought it wasn't even about Richardson. I was like, he's in a good position to succeed because of what we saw last season. Shane Steichen offense, 13th in DVOA with Gardner Minshew. Okay, so I think people have forgotten what he actually looked like as a quarterback. And you alluded to the Rams game, and that is one that jumps out in particular in my memory, and I think is probably a good starting point for why you like him so much.
Yeah, I know the Rams defense was not great last year, but they were fine. They're greater than some of their parts. Oh my God, he went toe to toe with Matthew Stafford, that's the spoilers. That's the guy I was deciding between. It's Richardson and Stafford. They just went haymaker after haymaker after haymaker, throwing balls over the middle, throwing balls downfield, getting away from defenders, throwing things sidearm. And this is a guy that was considered raw, which I always kind of fought back against in the prospect process. But this is a guy that moves around the pocket, has a great understanding and feel for playing the position. And I have yet to talk about the rare traits that he has, the outstanding speed, the arm strength, and all those things. But I want to talk about the other stuff, the pocket movement, the ability to mitigate negative plays. That it's a real deal.
Translated from college to the pros, even at a small sample size.
Very easily. And Steichen uses them perfectly, their head coach. And I just think he is put in a place right now to take a huge leap. That first month of the season, and again, another guy, I went back and I was like, all right, are those kind of a little rosy, rosy glasses from the first month? And I rewatched and I was like, oh yeah, this Anthony Richardson has MVP level upside. And I'm fine saying that on the show. And I actually have him as my kind of dark horse candidate to win MVP. It's 30-1 right now, if anyone's curious.
Okay, those odds, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Stroud, he was standing out more to me than Stroud in the first month of the season. I want to put it at that. Wow. And then Stroud just ascended from there. But I am very bullish on him. And this is a guy that has fewer pass attempts combined in college and pros than the top 16 passers had in the NFL last season, combined over those 6 years than just those guys in 1 year. So, but I think he's ready to take a huge, huge leap.
So this is where the parameters enter the discussion.
3 years.
Because I know, and I am taking Matthew Stafford at 12, who I had over Richardson in my rankings. This is why 3 years is so perfect, because if it was 5 years, it would I would go Richardson. There was a few other quarterbacks, not just Richardson, by the way. If it was 1 year, it would very obviously be Matthew Stafford.
Yes.
3 years, you're asking how long is Matthew Stafford going to keep playing football, which of course is an unknown. He has been quietly agitating for more guaranteed money. I don't know if you've seen any of the news stories about that. Yeah. Here's my thing. Like, I thought Stafford was cooked before last season. There was all those weird, like, oh, does he have a functioning elbow anymore?
Right.
And then he came back and balled out. And
awesome.
So I'm like, my thought process in taking him here is, if he can play anywhere close to he did last year, why would this man retire? He's still one of the 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL, I believe. Finished 6th in EPA per play. So if you can just get even 2 out of 3, I think this is worth it for my team, which is, by the way, really geriatric compared to your team. But
I'm a youth. I like mystery boxes.
Yeah, I know. And they're different kinds of mysteries. I think that's the question with him, is just how much longer he's going to play, because I mean, he was unbelievable last season.
Oh, I love
it. Was one of those days where when, like, I can't remember what week it was, but there was a moment where it felt like everybody was like, so Matthew Stafford looks as good as any quarterback in the NFL right now. Yeah.
Might have been that Colts game. It was, but okay. I thought these two are perfectly paired together. I love that. I also think he'll age okay. Arm strength, he doesn't rely on scrambling. He wants to win from the pocket, so arm strength should age okay.
He actually looked pretty good on the move last year too.
Yes,
I gotta say,
I saw some scrambles in there.
Regimen's like, but okay, 13. You're up next. You gonna continue your youth movement?
I am.
I know who you're gonna take.
Do you know? I'm gonna continue my draft spicy take. I'm going Drake Maye.
Oh my God! Oh,
who'd you think I was going?
Caleb.
I went Drake Maye. This is just, I'm consistent with my draft.
I gotta post this because you're gonna get absolutely dragged, and people.
It's fine
because I'm making all the very obvious banal choices, but
and I'm just Euro stepping around it.
You love Drake Maye. This is known.
I did.
You've been on my podcast talking about how high you were on him.
Yada yada yada. I went on every pod. That's all. It was just, I felt like a stand-up comedian telling the same joke. Like, it was the first time since I've joined media. That's the first. No one cares about this, but it's the first time that I felt like one of those like actors that they say, I only got known for one line, like, is everybody having fun yet?
Say the line.
Drake say the line. It was, I would go on the shows. I'm like, everyone, oh, great. So this is why we had you on, Nate. You're the Drake Maye guy. And it's like, well, I love Caleb too. But yes, anyways, here, I'm going to keep it consistent. Drake Maye, carry over from draft expectations. Again, this is a 3-year process. I think he has a higher floor than people are giving him credit. I don't think he's as much of a project as people are kind of throwing him out there. I think he's with some steady and smart pass catchers. So I'll kind of show that this year. I think this offensive system would be decent. Let him launch the ball, play action, help kind of lift the floor a little bit, this whole offense. I think the defense will help him keep him in games. So I know in a neutral situation that I would consider this, but just bringing the real life situation. And so if we're doing this 3-year process, I think he's a guy that with more and more reps, do, and just hit that, maybe those highs that I think he can achieve. Love him.
I love that in a good spot. I'm taking Caleb at 14.
Also love him. So I do want to say that.
I've spent the last
cut off right there.
4 months talking about these guys, so I'm not going to get into the Caleb of it all.
Good, thank you.
He was my QB1, so that's why I'm taking him here. We're almost at the halfway point, and we probably got to speed up.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's my fault. 15. My fault. I don't know who you're going to take here. We're about to end what I'm calling the Shanahan bend.
Yeah, we are.
Quarterbacks are up. There's okay. So are you gonna start that run on the Shanahans now?
I'm not. I'm keeping maybe the one last.
Yeah, you're taking my guy, aren't you?
Kyler Murray.
Oh, Kyler. Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty. Yeah, the tier, him and the Shanahan guys. This is where we're getting to this. Where'd you think I was thinking Geno?
Yeah.
Or no, not. But Geno. He's kind of in this. But no, Kyler. He could be maddening. But
let's talk about Kyler because nobody watched the Cardinals last year when he came back.
They should.
Have raved about their rushing attack.
Yeah,
but I have not really talked, which was really, really something. I have not really talked about Kyler. So let's talk about like what you saw from him when he came back last year and what makes you optimistic about him.
There was definitely some rust. Obviously, a guy coming back midseason and with not great circumstances around him as far as personnel level, but. I think anyone that's listened probably to your show knows that like what Drew Petzing did, what that offensive line did, or coach did, early returns are good. And that's why I'm optimistic that we see more sustainability with Kyler. I think Kyler's highs are as good as anybody. Like he did look like an MVP caliber player a couple of years ago when it was really just him carrying that whole offense and doing some crazy things. So a guy that I was lower on entering the league, I've come around on bigly on, but I just keep at it with Kyler. It was, again, inconsistent last year. You watched the Eagles game. You watched some games down the stretch. The Seahawks game, I believe, which was week 18 or week 17.
Yeah.
And it was clicking for him. He was trusting the offense, and that was with not great pass catchers, with them using a lot of tight ends, which is something I'm excited about this year for run game stuff, but also pass game stuff. But I think that Kyler with Marvin Harrison Jr., with more trust in the system, with probably the best coaching he's gotten, more consistent coaching he's gotten as a pro, that's why I'm so excited to see what he can do this year, because the highs are so good. So maybe lift that floor with him a little bit.
Yeah. A lot of the same for me in terms of how I feel about what I saw. You saw him kind of shaking off rust, developing more confidence in the structure of the offense, which was very, very different from what it was during the first part of his NFL career. So naturally, there's going to be a little bit of a transition. Yeah. I think two things jumped out to me watching him play, I guess. I thought he was more comfortable under pressure than I remembered, or I guess that I thought he would be coming back from the injury. Yeah. Against handling the blitz, handling pressure generally. And then as a runner, like he looked as dynamic as ever.
That's what I was worried about was.
Yes, right. Like, is he still, especially with this offense, which we knew was going to be more friendly to the quarterback run rather than just like, hey, Kyler, make something happen, although I know Cliff Kingsbury actually did a pretty good job calling.
He did. Yeah, I know. I know. I always bash him, but it's like
Jayden Daniels in his system. No, so I do want to. But naturally, when you have more tight ends on the field and a better blocking offensive line and a really good backfield with the running backs, that's going to help the quarterback. Is fun backfield as well. So I was looking kind of like trying to find his underlying stats rather like to just see how fast he was. And one thing that jumped out to me, pulling from Next Gen Stats, is he ranked first amongst all quarterbacks in max speed at the line of scrimmage, which I think reflected what I saw. You remember the infamous clip? The Cardinals started putting out those clips where they were looking, or first the Falcons did it first.
Falcons did it, and then there's season off clip, and then
the Cardinals did it with Kyler. But I thought, like, I know it's one thing, like it's like whatever, that's cool. But I actually thought that clip showed this stat, which is he looked really, really fast, and not just fast, but sudden, like explosive as a runner, which I think is very, very important. And I'm excited about him. Okay, so I have Geno at 16.
Yeah, love it.
So we haven't gotten to the Shanahan curve yet, Shanahan bend. We were joking about this because I just started posting a lot of these stats. I went on like a defending Geno rant.
Oh yeah, you're ready. You're ripping and roaring on that one. Well, I loved it.
I just don't think people appreciated how terrible the Seahawks offensive line was last year. And it showed up on tape. Watch the Steelers game, in which Geno, by the way, makes some of the best plays of, I think, any quarterback. He was outstanding in a pocket that was collapsing immediately. But through the course of the season, it really shows up when you look at his numbers going from first to second to third. The Seahawks offense was basically non-functional on third down. He was the best quarterback in football on first down. And then it would just fall off from there when it became, right. Yeah. And then the other thing, and I on third down, he was the third most pressured quarterback in the NFL, despite the quarterbacks above him were like Russell Wilson and Sam Howell, who hold on to the ball forever. Geno Smith does not hold on to the ball forever. In fact, I believe on 3 seconds or less, throws taken 3 seconds or less, he was the most pressured quarterback in football. These are all offensive line stats, y'all. Yeah. Like, this is not so. I think some people look at a season and they say, "Oh, he came back to earth," and it's like, no. He was still very good. He's very accurate. I thought he's very underrated as a playmaker. He had good weapons. He was just in a very difficult situation in terms of his pass protection. So I could even argue for him to be higher, frankly. But to me, I put him in that tier above the guys who we're going to get to, below some of the younger playmakers, just mostly because of his age, honestly.
That's it. If it's one of those, if you need one game in any type of offense kind of thing, those type of arguments, Geno is way higher in this. Yeah. Like, it's kind of like, hey, you got to put together one team, one game, put together a game plan. Okay, yeah. I'm going. One Geno ranks so much higher than I think people expect, because, like you said, all the stuff you brought up, he stands in there and rips it, and it's awesome. And he's better underneath than maybe even I gave him credit for. The receivers sometimes don't help him out too much. DK likes to drift, and he still manages to complete it. And that's another thing. You just brought the offensive line stuff. Some of the receiver play was up and down, just inconsistent. It felt like sometimes maybe the game plan stuff overwhelmed them. Maybe they just like kind of like just they're inconsistent. The Ravens game was where it showed up the most, I thought.
Yeah.
And Geno's trying. He's trying to make it right. He's another guy that lives in aggression, which is again a good place to live. Yes, you can have some negative moments, some moments where it's like, or some stretches where it's like, wow, our offense can't get going, but again, that lifts the whole offense up because if you just chain together 2-3 explosive plays, those are first downs that just are packaged together, and Geno eats those up. Like that's what's so cool about him. Stands in there. It doesn't matter what the offensive line is. It's stand there and rip it. But yeah, I'm with you. I have Geno right exactly where you did. I just had Cowher. I mean, I should say Cowher one spot ahead. I think also just gonna be a good fit with Ryan Grubb, new offensive coordinator.
Yes, I'm going to get into that. I've been going back and watching some Huskies football.
It's good stuff.
It is fun.
I know. I'm trying not to get like, hey, they've never coached in the NFL, but it's like, have you seen this stuff though? It's like, I know.
And it's not
hokey.
It's not. It's
not gimmicky.
You see on Sundays.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
just dressed up really, really well. I know. I'm excited.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's take a quick break, come back, and hit all the Shanahan quarterbacks.
Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer: hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire.
Okay, we're back. I am cursing you with picking the first of these guys. There is one guy who is not. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the Shanahans, but there's one guy who we haven't taken, who's not one of them, who, if this was 1 year, I think would probably go a lot higher. I'm curious.
Okay. Yeah. I know. That's so, okay. I'm sticking with my board.
I'm stressing you out. I'm like
gut check followed by cramming.
Okay. So now we find out of the Shanahans who
this was a review, and I'm going to maintain my position of being agnostic to this debate, but it's Brock Purdy right here. I actually ended up with Brock Purdy over right next to each other. So it was Purdy Goff.
You took him over.
I did, but they were 1-2. Or
there's no 17A, 17B. It's 17. You're Purdy over Goff.
I know, but in the Shanahan's here, it's 1A, 1B. But no, hard to separate these two. But what it came down to, Purdy has a little bit more juice in the arm and a little bit more creativity and a little bit of that creation, that ad lib ability. That's what the tiebreaker ended up being for me. I still appreciate Goff, and I think he's tough as hell. I love seeing him rip throws over the middle. It's one of my favorite things ever since college. So yeah, you're going Goff, all right, perfect.
Let's talk about them together.
Yeah, it's great. I love this. But I do think with Purdy and I'm dipping my toes into dangerous territory here. I think his biggest supporters overrate some of the things that are easiest and underrate some of the things he actually does well.
Ooh.
And that is something I've kind of noticed when I watch him is those throws over the middle that we see everybody in these offenses hit. Yeah. And that's kind of like, okay, we saw Jimmy G rip those same throws over the middle. We watched Tua in this offense. We watched all these guys rip those same throws. Purdy, to me, is ripping throws outbreakers towards the sideline, usually to Ayuk. Those throws, to me, are the exceptional throws that he makes and that he opens up in this offense, the ability to push outside. And so that is what I like Purdy. He's another guy that whatever, he's going to be 16-20. Watch him a little more, appreciate some of the things he does do, some of the creation stuff, but don't think he has the ceiling that some of his maybe proponents have kind of made him out to be a little bit. So I think this is a fair ranking for him.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm teasing you, and I didn't intend it to play out this way, but I did saddle you with not only going first here, but going first again in the next tier. Cause I had these two on the same tier. Personally, I had them next to each other as well.
Same.
For me, it was playmaking versus arm strength was how I broke it down. I think Goff has a better arm and Purdy's more of a playmaker.
Yeah.
And I slightly tilt Goff because of the arm strength and your timeline, and because he just impressed the hell out of me this season.
I love watching Goff. I know.
Like I know that his pressure numbers still weren't great, and obviously he was in pretty fantastic. Both these quarterbacks were in fantastic circumstances. That's why they're in this bed together, both from in a million ways, right? Playmakers, play calling, all of it.
One guy was Mr. Irrelevant. One guy was 1-1. It's kind of
truly,
yeah. I know.
One written off, you know.
Yeah, the Goff stuff. Yeah, I know, right? The Goff stuff with it's just so many times I've seen him now, and this is kind of scouts always like to say that Cheetah doesn't change the spots or all that. Is when that pressure happens. When I watched in the Bears game, when Frank Ragnow wasn't playing at Chicago, watching other games, when that pressure happens consistently, especially internal pressure, it just comes unraveled. There's just no next step for him. And that's kind of always just, I can never get over the top with Goff, even if I just really appreciate a lot of the other things that he does well. And so maybe, again, that's why I tipped it to Purdy's scales or towards Purdy's side, because it's just that extra half second he can create.
The single most important thing that Purdy has brought to this team is the creation, the ability to play under pressure. And, I think sometimes, not to get like philosophical,
I love it though.
We always say, there's the quarterbacks you win with and the ones you win because of and whatever.
Blue chip, green
and
chip.
And there's some true. Like when you look at the top 7-ish here, there's the win because of, no doubts, right? And then some debatable ones. But I do think win with, we actually probably paint too broad of a brush. There's guys you can win with to an extent. Yeah. But when we talk about Purdy and Goff, who I think we both are like, you win with them, you could get to the Super Bowl with these guys. And I don't think that's true of a lot of quote unquote win with quarterbacks. Like we always joke, you could drop your cousin who's an accountant into a Shanahan offense. And obviously I'm being hyperbolic, but I actually do think that those players are a little bit more rare than we think, especially because of their particular set of skills.
I think the floor of QB play has never been higher, but it's never been harder to play high-end play QB.
Yeah.
I don't know if that came out as smooth as I want it to be, but I think it's never been harder to play like an all-pro quarterback, but the baseline's real high. So like these guys that maybe we're saying, because everyone wants to say it's like it's top 10, top 6, top 5. Sometimes there's 14 top 10 quarterbacks. That makes sense. The pool is bigger than the actual slots. And I think right now where we're at this position where we're in a transition with the NFL is we got so many of these young guys, especially in the AFC. 8 of my top 10 were in the AFC of my big board. Is that now we're getting this influx of talent. So these guys, it's like, wow, they're 18, they're 16. It's like, yeah, but they're still do a lot of good things. It's not like we're totally dissing them and everything. So I always want to kind of like put that caveat in there.
I always joke with Goff, if football was played between the numbers, I would probably have him as the best quarterback in the NFL.
10 to 20 yards between the numbers. The throw that I look at is kind of like those are big boy throws. He is like he does it perfectly.
if you were to say he was kept clean, you would be top. And people say, well, that's the
7 on 7. He'd be a top 3 guy.
And we can say like, well, yeah, but you can't count on that, and that's why he's not in the top. However, and we're not accounting for system here. He plays behind one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines of football. So
with a great
okay, 19. We're still in Shanahan Bend. However, the one player I alluded to, I think I'm talking about, is still looming.
Yeah, and that's who I think I'm going to take, just to make you go back to the Shanahan Bend. So I'm just going to veer off real quick to Aaron Rodgers drive, who he's gone on Shanahan Bend a little bit, but now he's back in the Hackett world. But yeah, Rodgers.
He does not want to live on Shanahan Bend. He doesn't. Interest in driving there.
No. The cruise control did not want to go there on his Tesla. But I assume he drives a Tesla. But it's with Rodgers. It's just Could
you see Aaron Rodgers pulling out?
Absolutely. But anyways. Still, maybe I'm just thinking of the one drive he had in the preseason where he's just ripping it to Garrett Wilson, but it's like, he still got it. He still got that arm. And we're going to talk about another older quarterback coming off an Achilles injury in a second. That's what maybe why I'm talking myself into more of a like he'll do okay. Achilles injury is a 2-year injury. It really is, to be even near 100%. Like, you can play and everything, but your injury, you're going to be 80% at best. As far as just burst, that's how I feel anyways. I did not pop my Achilles ever. I didn't play enough to do that kind of thing. But it's also one of those things, just watching guys recover from that. I do think because of the torque he creates from his core, from his wrists, from his forearm, that he doesn't use his legs as much to create those throws. So yes, he does in a way. Yeah, we can get a longer discussion. I don't care about it, but but it is one of those things where I'm not as pessimistic about that injury hurting his ability to throw as maybe some other guys, maybe coming off that type of injury, even if he's in his 40s. But I just think the highs what he can achieve is just still up there.
If this was a 1 year exercise, I think we would both probably put him in our top 10. Right?
Yeah, sniffing in that range. Yeah,
well, I guess maybe not. It would be around that. Yeah, in that range. Okay, I agree with everything you said. I had him next. Then I have two quarterbacks who are similar to Purdy, Goff. I have next to each other. One of whom is a guy you alluded to. I'm going to take the other one. I'm taking Tua here.
Okay, that's probably who I would have gone with.
I mean, this is more between him and the other quarterback. The Achilles is what kind of in the time frame. Is what pushed him down and pushed Tua up for me. This is another one where it's like you're trying to get the memory of the last few games of the season and remember when this was like a potentially historic offense. I think the question you just have to ask that should determine, I think, not just whether Tua belongs on this list, but whether or not you want to pay him $50+ million as a franchise is, yes, he can operate the beautiful machine. How can he play? Can he execute under pressure? Not even frequently because, and by the way, I guess I want to like with Jared Goff, I was like, yeah, he's not good at, so Goff and Tua are interesting to put side by side, right? Because Goff is not great under pressure. Neither of these quarterbacks are particularly great under pressure. Goff, we're like, okay, but yeah, he plays behind this amazing offensive line. And in a way, like that's a little unfair because this is supposed to be an exercise in a vacuum.
Right.
And if we switched those quarterbacks, I think we would both be much higher on Tua than Goff playing behind that offensive line in Miami.
Out of a Goff in Miami would be pretty fun too. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. That's a fun thought experiment.
I know that. I know that. I understand what you're trying to say.
The point I'm trying to make is that Tua's pressure mitigation is built in. Yeah. He enters as a guy because he throws the ball so damn quickly.
Yes.
And with, he negates a lot of the problems that he also creates because yes, he struggles under pressure, but because he's so fast, he is rarely under pressure. However, he will be under pressure at some point. It happens.
He understands his limits to a fault almost. Yeah. Like that's what it is. And he's a 2 seconds or less quarterback. And that is how he plays. What previous coaches did, Gotze, George Gotze was his coordinator for a minute. I think they had like 5 coordinators at one point, like whatever they were doing. I just thought about the Cubs back in the 60s did like 5 managers at once, but that's a different story. But they did RPOs. They said 2 seconds or less RPOs underneath. Everything's 3 yards or less, 5 yards or less, slants, flats, all these things. What Mike McDaniel did, and he's earned so much respect from me, even as these offenses has fallen off the last 2 years because of what he knew that what the weaknesses were. And you could tell in these games, the Chargers games 2 years ago, what he tried to do after that game and try to mitigate, all the things that were happening the rest of the season and try to like, okay, they're doing this to us, so we have to do this in the run game, yada, yada, yada. What he did was, hey, all right, it's 2 seconds or less. Let's just get really fast guys and push those RPOs from 4 yards to 14 yards, from 5 yards to 15 yards. And that's why it's a lot of stuff downfield. So that's why Tua's numbers are always so warped because they just truly just stretched out what he can achieve. And this is it. And that's why I struggle with Tua because I feel like this is the best we'll ever see, the best circumstances we'll see him play in. Maybe not the offensive line and everything, but as far as offensive, receivers and play calling and everything. And he does throw the anticipation. He does throws with accuracy. It's just that you see him hit that ceiling over and over. You see it against the Bills in the regular season. They made him push the ball outside. You see it when the weather gets cold, where it's just like when he has to push the ball downfield. It's when those push the ball things get taken away. He has to operate on time. It's just a hard way to live. And so I think there's an Alex Smith path here. I think that he can achieve that, but I don't know where that is in this kind of to rank him. I think this is very fair.
Sorry, I actually just heard 100 Dolphins fans outside of your house when you said that Alex Smith path. I might have to call the police to come save you.
I have a few of these. I traded on this show.
I have the way this is panning out is amazing for me in terms of avoiding hate, because you're making all the courageous choices and I'm making all the easy ones. Okay, we do have to speed up.
I've been pent up. I've been a kicked up hose.
Yeah. I love it. 21. Okay, so
where were we even at?
I think
all right, here we go.
Probably the guy that we've been talking around is going to come up here. I'm guessing.
Kirk Cousins?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And that concludes the Kyle Shanahan portion of the 2024 QB draft.
All these guys had it right near each other. Cousins a little younger than Rodgers. I understand that. Yeah. Oh, I know the next one's tough. I almost went spicy here, but I didn't. But Cousins never relied on mobility. Like that's also kind of some of his negatives. But also he never had he can push the ball. He throws a beautiful deep ball and everything. But again, a lot of it, he uses his whole body to throw. Cousins really hitches up into stuff, and that's why the Achilles stuff is ooh, all right, we'll see. I think he's going to work his butt off. That's what Kirk Cousins does. But, some of the athleticism being sapped with him, even if he is younger than Rodgers, I'm actually a little more curious about it than even with Rodgers.
Do you think, knowing that, there's this assumption that it's going to look exactly like Minnesota, under center, play action, boot him out, but that's assuming he moves the way he always has. I wonder if this offense might actually look a little bit different from what we're expecting.
We might see some more pistol, might see more, maybe what the Rams did last year. They went from, McVay went from, I think, one snap of pistol in his entire tenure to 80 or 100 last year, something like that. So maybe some of that helps out. That helps out the legs a little bit.
I see a lot of pistol this year.
A lot of pistol with Kirk Cousins. I know that. I'm curious to see him that. The injury is a little scary for me with him.
This is where things start getting just Okay, so I've been I know who you're going to pick next over and over. Now it's all bets are out. This is pure vibes, chaos, personal preferences. Okay, so I know you're not going to agree with this. I am going to take Jayden Daniels here at 22. I know. And I'm so scared because of situation. This is going to look terrible. I have been on the record. I am very apprehensive about what he is walking into in Washington, play caller, offensive line, all of that. However, I do like the player. I like, if he was walking into a great situation, I would feel awesome about taking him here. But I feel like his athleticism will translate immediately. I know you are very concerned about him potentially getting sent into the upside down. I know. Listen, a little screaming is good. I know, but here's the thing. After Jayden Daniels, I think there's no one who's I can't believe you would take him over. We're now in this zone.
He said his personal preference. Yeah. I mean, his whole
any
thing
player
is
could
preference.
go at this point on. So
yeah, I know this is favorite rom-com territory here. I think, Daniels, why I have some hesitations with him is just that his kind of play style can not translate well to the next level. Not, a lot of stuff to the outside, a lot of sacks, maybe doesn't push the ball as much as people think. I think that last year's offense has worked his kind of play style more than what he's did before that. And most of the time. So I still like him though. I still think he's accurate, understands how to play football, understands protections, all the smart stuff. It's just that I think when people see, really, really fast, that means his ceiling is all the way to the moon. It's really I think he's more at his ceiling already. And he's almost the same age as the guy I might take
That's
next.
Actually a lot of my feeling is I feel like his athleticism gives him a little bit of a floor as well as the experience. And I think again, I don't want to get too into these guys. I've been talking about them forever. I viewed him as the higher floor, potentially lower ceiling quarterback because of it, which I feel good about with my 3-year timeline. But that's not how a lot of people think of him. We'll see. All right. Who are you taking next?
Oh, I know. This was a rewatch bump. And maybe I just watched his best 2 games, but that's Will Levis.
Yeah, I knew you were
Titans. Yeah. Older, has things to work on. Trust me. And man, you want to talk about
he had a 10.3 average depth of target.
Holy crap, man! He wings that thing, and it's awesome. He is Jay Cutler. He is Zoomer Jay Cutler. He really is. He is Jeff George and Vinny Testaverde. He is these guys down the timeline of this quarterback style, but. That dude will rip a throw and watch the Texans game late in the year. It's it's good stuff. It's at home, I believe, because they're wearing their Oilers jerseys, which I still do not. I'm fine with them wearing the Oilers stuff, but not against the Texans. That is a bridge too far. But anyways,
offensive.
I'm going to clip some of those throws because it's like, wow, wow, okay, like you're doing some stuff here. He can run. He's tough. He will whip the ball down the field. He's got a pretty good ecosystem right now. I don't know. Titans are weird, but yeah. What are you gonna say?
My
his stats are
concern
terrible.
about him. Yeah, throw out his stats.
Throw out his stats. Rookie year stats don't count unless they're really good.
A lot of it is because of how terrible that offensive line was. Like you can say, oh my God, he had 9.7% sack rate. Well, Ryan Tannehill was 11% playing behind the same offensive line. Like, we know the most of that was, I did have concerns about his ability to handle pressure coming out of college. And it was like taking a quarterback for whom that was already an issue and putting him in literally the worst possible situation. I am worried he's going to get hurt. Watching him play, it is insane. And I'm not just talking about the sacks. I am no. Talking about him as a runner. Like he is a guy who I'm like, oh my God, someone needs to get in here and put a governor on you because you are too tough.
That same Texans game, it's a third down, first drive, third down. It's like he's 7 yards from the first down marker. And there's like 3 defenders around him, and he full out lunges for it. Like tries to get 7 yards in a launch. It was like, I know he took like 2 hits on it. And I was like, oh, okay. He's a weird combo too, where he's kind of a wild horse at quarterback and also too mechanical at times. And so reps are going to help him, even if he is older. Yeah. But he's a funny watch. He's a fun watch. I enjoyed watching Will Levis at the end of the year. I'm a little more optimistic with him and the Titans than I thought. So I'm glad I did this process in May.
Really fun group of pass catchers.
Yeah, I know.
We all think will be a good
like the O-line. I got Callahan there.
I'll take Baker at 24.
That's who I had next too. Wow.
Yeah. Baker, I talked earlier about the quarterbacks you can win with, and I would put him in the group. I think he is deservedly, though, behind the guys we mentioned earlier because just consistency, honestly. I think about his last season, it was just up and down. There were games where he looked like firmly like a 12 to 18 guy. And then there are games where he looked worse than that. So I think that for me, it's just, I think he has the ability to be one of those Shanahan guys, but he doesn't have the consistency that they all do to me. So, all right, let's keep it moving. 25.
Oh, man.
Weird.
This is hard because screw it. Justin Fields. I'm throwing him in there. Okay, Give me the next 3 years. He'll find a landing.
You're taking so Russell Wilson is still on the board, just to be clear.
Yes, Russell is still on the board. And Russell might be the starter. They're saying he is right at this point in time. I'm still not. So I'm taking a backup before over like 7 starters, including several first round picks. No, I'm going with Fields here. I do think he played his best ball of his career as a passer last year. I'm an understanding of what he is, what his ceiling is. Weird. He's playing with the quarterback that I think his ceiling is, Russell Wilson. Like they have very similar play styles.
I know.
Like, it's good and bad. It's every underlying stat.
I know. When I was doing all this Steelers prep and I was like, who are the most important players? What would the offense look like? And normally it'd be like, well, you got to kind of decision, like you got to plan out. But I was like, no, pretty much the same things apply in both of these. Both things need to be better. The things that the skill players who will benefit, the things that Arthur Smith needs to do. It is interesting. At minimum, they've simplified their process.
Yeah, they did. They streamlined it. It was so bizarre because before they signed Russ, I was like, they're not going to sign Russell Wilson. Arthur Smith's not going to like that type of quarterback. They won't trade for Justin Fields. And then that's exactly who they go after. I'm curious. It's another team I'm very curious to watch. I'm excited about their run game. I'm excited what Arthur Smith brings there. Excited what they did with the O-line. Pickens is going to eat these two. No matter, both of these quarterbacks are going to feed a receiver like Pickens.
Yeah.
So, but it's just throwing over the middle stuff I'm really curious about. I love the run game stuff. I think that they'll bring with the QB with Fields probably. So I don't know. I feel like he deserves a home somewhere. I understand what he is now as a quarterback.
A little bit of Justin Fields stock. 25 is totally reasonable.
Very fair. I feel like there's other guys too. If I'm being realistic, but still.
I'm taking JJ McCarthy at 26.
That's almost who I went with. So.
Yeah. So I'm really trying to separate him from situation because I think this pick is going to look good because of the situation, which is a little bit unfair because we are really trying to pick these guys in a vacuum. But even in a vacuum, I thought there was enough about what I liked about him as a prospect. Again, we're not going to go in depth in these guys anymore, but or at least just give that a break. But I think he has certainly the tool sets to make his way into the Shanahan bend, plus an ability to, there's enough also that he can do to make him potentially rise above that. So I am excited.
The ceiling was Kirk plus. I thought was his ceiling. Like Kirk with the
Purdy plus.
Purdy plus. Yeah, same.
I mean,
same,
you know,
same guy,
okay.
same tier. It's the Animorphs, like just moving across.
Yeah. Somebody should Photoshop that. But like where they all rank would be very divisive.
I know. I always say that too. There was the Justin Herbert, Tannehill, Desmond Ridder one. That was like an Animorph too. Those three. Yeah. All right. Next one. I guess it's
getting gross. Let's go
back to the bend and kind of swerving off. I don't know what you want to consider him. That's Derek Carr. I feel like this is kind of like a fair spot for him. A nice, perfectly average starting quarterback. That's where I'm at with Derek Carr. And I feel like that should be an accepted thought on him. But yeah,
10th in QBR kept clean last year. The problem was he had a QBR of 9 under pressure, which is what it looked like.
And have we looked at the O-line again? We have a guy who I thought was going to be a right tackle or a guard, potentially being a left tackle day one. So that'll be interesting. He doesn't do well with pressure. It's just always kind of his thing. But
I'm feeling good actually about getting Daniel Jones at 28.
I was curious where you go with Jones.
What a sentence.
I'm actually okay.
I don't think he will
this puts me in a tough spot.
He's not a top 10 quarterback. I think we all agree on that now and whatever. But I think he is one where, the circumstance, I mean, that was a non-functional offensive line really his entire career. But we probably saw the best of him in 2022. And I actually think that we could see similar level play. Maybe not this year. We'll see what happens with the reconfigured offensive line and neighbors. But I think arm strength, dual threat ability, there's enough there where at 28, I feel like he's great value.
Yeah, if we're talking about the Animorph spectrum, he's part of the Fields and Russ.
Yeah.
Animorphs.
Yeah.
Hertz is on there too. In
totally.
A way. Yeah, they have a kind of similar play style. It's kind of fun. Daniel Jones. I mean, I know now we're getting into.
Let's do it.
One of them almost feels like a pity pick. My son's just crying too right now, so that's just not helping right now. Like where I'm just like, yeah, that's how my internal brain feels right now. I am going with. This is tough. This is really tough. I'm going to complete the Steelers duo here. I would just go with Russell Wilson. I got one part of the set. I'll get the second part of the set and just say, hey, I'll get him for the next 1 year or 2 years. This is just because you're going to put me. I know who you're going to go next. Okay, yeah, but yeah, going Russell Wilson. Everything I said about Fields kind of applies for Russ. Just older. He's got to stop checking the ball so much. He's got to stop checking the balls down so much. That's one thing. He's got to be a little bit more aggressive. Hoping Arthur Smith kind of brings it out of him a little bit. But yeah.
You know who I'm going next? I don't know where I'm going next. I'm looking at I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys left.
Yes. I know.
This is an emotional pick, not a. I'm taking Bryce here.
I know. I wanted to take him just to see where you would have gone with this.
I'm taking him with. Oh, that's 30, not 29. With the bet that it was just a nightmare scenario. Now, obviously, the track record of quarterbacks who have bounced, 1.1 is on there, Jared Goff.
Trevor?
But it was real bad last year. I brought this stat out, not for this. I was putting together my X factors, which I do every year. I'm going to do the most important players on every team. And this is the one on the Panthers. It's a Bryce. It's the percentage of throws he made over 10 yards, so rolling out screens to players who were open. So
it's it could be so low.
It's 12%.
That's
the lowest in the NFL.
Easily.
12% of his real throws were to open players. That is hell.
Yeah.
Hell.
And that's a metric that just matches the eye test because it felt like hell. Everything just felt so tight.
Hell.
Just, couldn't run consistently. Everything was tight underneath. No one could get open. No one could create after the catch. Another guy that, I already used this analogy, but another guy that's like kind of maybe on the Alex Smith tier as well, where that's where I think ideally he is. He's a point guard playing quarterback, not a Russell Westbrook point guard, but a true John Stockton type point guard. Just really, Chris Paul, Chris Paul could shoot the long too and everything, but, just really, 15 assists, only a couple points, but that offense, that circumstances last year, there's no way. The run game wasn't good enough to make it easy circumstances, and the receivers weren't creating after the catch. So that's why it was like such an anomaly. Even if I was lower on Bryce in the process than others, and like think his ceiling is limited, that it's not like that. Like there's a quarterback here.
All right, you bought enough.
You're making me do it.
Got?
Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I know.
Have to take him. But I think this ranking is very fair for his on-field play because every quarterback after him basically outplayed him, or at least played to the level that he was playing at, and he's got pretty good circumstances. I thought the game was too fast for him last year. I thought there was a lot of stuff where he was holding on to the ball. He was looking in the wrong places. I thought a lot of the games, the Colts game, I think the game he got hurt, or maybe the last injury that he got early in that game, I thought he was missing throws. His on-field play has not reflected what he's been paid. And I know he's missed time and everything, rightfully so, but it's just also one of these things now with the injuries accumulating. I don't know where you're going to get this kind of like real play from.
He looked panicky.
Times. His eyes were bad.
Derek Carr, I mentioned his QBR being 9 and laughing. Sean's was 7 under pressure.
Bill Callahan left, by the way.
Yeah, saying his last game was his best game. Okay. Let's see if he can do it again.
Was that the Ravens game that they kept bringing up?
Yeah,
he didn't do anything in that game. He was all screens. I know, and underneath stuff. So yeah.
I'm gonna take Bo Nix at 32. I actually think he could be a lot better than 32. Purely, I actually think he's got a decently high floor, and I think it's a good pairing of play caller, though maybe not for the reasons that he's not Drew Brees, guys, but I actually think he could be better than that, but I'm going to take him there just because, I had a lot of questions about him.
Does that just leave Gardner?
Yes, it does.
Gardner Minshew.
You got both Fields and Wilsons. You got a nice little hedge built in, by the way. Here's the final list, everybody.
There it is. Yeah, Gardner actually and Bo Nix. There's the Animorphs there. If you want one for those two, that's a great list.
Okay, so sorry, I'm skipping over Minshew. Let me ask you just a real quick question for the Raiders fans. Would you to start Minshew over AOC?
Yeah, I would. I sound off with AOC. I thought there was just a lack of kind of like Minshew's thing is he doesn't push the ball. So it's just going to be, and so maybe give some chances to Devontae Adams because it's better receivers than he's had in a while, but it's like, that's kind of his thing. But maybe if the receivers are better, they would be okay. But O'Connell is kind of like, I've seen enough. I know what you are, kind of like a solid backup.
Trade for Jacoby Brissett, please.
Right. It's been the plan the whole
Tom Telesco, trade for Jacoby.
He's coaching Maye up. They're already best friends over there. North Carolina, NC State connection. They're already best friends.
Send Jacoby. Okay, so to wrap this up, Nate, your final team is Mahomes, Herbert, Love, Stroud, Lawrence, Richardson, Maye, Murray, Purdy, Rodgers, Cousins, Levis, Fields, Carr, Wilson, Watson, Minshew. You got a lot of your guys.
I did get a lot of my guys. Thank you. Guys.
Yeah.
Great host.
I got more of the conventional. I feel like yours is going to be more criticized, but you got... I think you got some players I really wanted. I ended up with Josh Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Prescott, Hurts, Stafford. I got like the first take roster here.
Yeah, that's
Caleb,
fun. I know.
Geno, Goff, and Tua.
You got the whole NFC East.
Yeah, Daniels, don't love that. Jane Daniels, Baker, JJ. I went young. I got a lot of young guys. Daniel Jones, Bryce Young, Bo Nix. I should come up with a system to evaluate. Maybe we could just do it by. I'll come up with like one of those QB composite metrics and then add them up and see who did better at the end of the year. Would you be up to revisit that with me?
Absolutely.
Right,
anything competition related? Yes.
Accountability. Okay. Before I let you go, I do want to wrap. I forgot to do this last week. We were doing content recommendations on the pod. I'll go first really quickly. 2 things. I don't think it's over yet. But the show Hacks, I'm really enjoying the season of Hacks on HBO. It's just like, I'm sure living in Vegas, you might like it takes place in Vegas.
No, I've seen season 1. Yeah, it's great.
It's just like a nice, like it's funny. It's like comfortable. I think Jean Smart, who's the main character, is like unbelievable in it. I just think she's maybe my favorite working actress right now. And then the other content recommendation I have is I just listened to an episode at Times Daily on how whales talk.
Yeah, I saw you tweet that. I'm so into that. P&W kids. Whales, man.
Love whales.
I'm excited. Love whales.
And what is your recommendation?
Ooh, I got a couple. Godzilla -1. Finally got around to seeing it.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, kind of a fun throwback, not only because it's told like World War II times and just after post World War II, but also just kind of how they did it. Like it's almost like an homage a little bit to older movies, but really well done, lower budget movie that the special effects they extrapolate as much as anyone. So I highly recommend that. Godzilla -1. I was gonna say Shogun, but I feel like that's a little like everyone's seen that.
I don't know if everybody's seen it.
Shogun's awesome.
Shogun season 2, by the way.
Yeah, which I know it's like, well, deviating from the book as long as you know.
As long as it's good. I mean, they definitely set up season 2. So.
Right. I mean, the look and everything. I know. Don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, no, book's been out for 40 years. But yeah, Shogun, great. And then last thing, book I read most recently is Winning Fixes Everything by Evan Drellick, which was my former colleague at The Athletic, but about the Houston Astros and about over the last kind of 15 years, over the winning regime that ended up going, the tanking before, but just all the behind the scenes stuff. As someone that's worked in some NFL teams and NFL offices, this is one of the best reflections of the personalities involved in the front offices of sports organizations. That's how I'll leave it at. But I loved it. I think anyone that's near sports should read it. I think it was just a really, really good book.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that one. I'm just finishing Crook Manifesto by Colson Whitehead. It's not my favorite of his books, but his writing is so damn good, just on a sentence level, that I'm glad I don't write anymore, because if I was still writing and reading it, I would feel really bad about my writing. So, anyways, I'm open to book recommendations as well for those who are out there. Nate Tice podcast TBD coming in the future. I'm sure we'll have him on to talk about that. But in the meantime, you can follow him on all social platforms. Nate Tice, you probably already do if you listen to this. Thanks for coming on the show, buddy, and telling the world that you like Anthony Richardson more than Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, Aaron Rodgers, and Tua Tagovailoa. Let's go. Thank you, as always, by the way, to Omaha Productions, our producers, Kirsten Sebecki, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Anthony Jimenez. You can check this podcast out on YouTube, youtube.com/@MinaKimes. Please subscribe. You can also watch it on ESPN 2 or News, or it's on ESPN on some channel on Wednesday. Or you can listen ad-free on Amazon Music.